Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of the Renovation and Outdoor Living Show. This is, of course, Tuesday, the 14th of July, and I'm back home with Wi-Fi after last week's attempt at remote broadcasting. I don't know if you were watching last week, but if you were on Tuesday, you'll have seen that I ended up in some remote car park in the middle of Rotorua in the pouring rain with a bike roof rack sticking out of the top of my head. And then by Friday, I'd got to my batch where I thought everything would be fine, but the Wi-Fi wasn't working. It was a complete disaster. As soon as my guests started talking, I froze. You couldn't hear me. I could hear everything. I could see everything, but it was a bit of a strange one. Thankfully, we have two heroes who helped out on Friday. First, Kim Reike, who was our first guest, who just kept the lowdown, who gave us the lowdown on everything to do with cladding, and she just kept on talking. We're occasionally sort of saying, I don't know if you can hear me, Rawdon, so I'm just going to carry on talking. She had no idea if she could hear, if I could hear her or not. And then when it was obvious that my Wi-Fi was so poor, I wasn't going to be participating any more of our show, our second hero stepped up. That was Ravina, our producer, who took over presenting the duties, did a brilliant job. I'm surprised that I was invited back this week. Now, Ravina chatted with James McLean from JD Landscape Architecture. This was all about adding street appeal. And two main themes came through here. One was James talking to us about the rules which you have to be aware of, particularly restrictions or covenants in new developments, where often that's what we're faced with new builds, governing what we can and cannot do. And also how to then draw the attention to the bits of our front of the house we actually want people to see, because so often nowadays new builds, garage, right in front of the house. So how do you actually draw attention to the main entrance rather than it looking like a parking lot? So really good advice from James on that one. So to today's theme is the ins and outs of water tanks. Pretty relevant topic for those of us who live here in Auckland, where, if you know or not, there is a water shortage happening for months. We've got water restrictions. Despite the fact that it's pouring with rain outside at the moment, these restrictions are dragging on. This is a hot topic here in New Zealand's biggest city. Now, Andrew Chin is the head of healthy water strategy at the Auckland Council. He recently led the public engagement on the, I don't know if you remember, it was called the Our Water Future discussion document, a really, really important part of his job. He's been in the water industry for the best part of 20 years, qualified as both an engineer and a planner. Now, Tennille's just, sorry, Andrew, I was introducing you just now. Tennille's just said she can't hear me properly. So if that's true of any others, I'm being told that my voice is breaking. Who knows why? Anyway, let's keep on going, because Andrew, I'm hoping you can hear me, because you're very much in a position, I was just saying, you're an engineer and planner, which is, I guess, the perfect combination if you're trying to actually guide the development of Auckland's better water quality outcomes.
Absolutely, yes. And like, as you said earlier, Rawdon, this year in particular, we are facing the worst crisis we've had in our water supply for a very long time. So we very much want to encourage a much more diverse range of water sources in Auckland.
Which is what we're talking about now. By the way, Tennille, you can now hear me. Good, cool. So before we talk about urban Auckland, because I'm right in the centre of the city, so I'm across that, I though first of all want to talk about the water supply for our more rural areas, because that's where commonly communities are hit. So what are your suggestions for people in the rural areas? What should they be thinking about at the moment?
Well, a lot of rural Aucklanders went through a pretty dry summer, the one just gone. And so if there's anyone who ran out of water and needed a refill, they need to think very seriously about getting more water storage for this coming summer, because we were lucky over last summer that we had plenty of water in the dams during the summer. But if the dam levels stay low over the coming summer, then we won't have as much water available to top up people's tanks by a tanker in the coming summer. So the best security you can give yourself is to get another tank and increase the amount of storage that you have on your site.
Can you give me an idea of how much people do rely on those water deliveries?
Well, a lot of it depends on how many tanks you have. If you're a family of four with a single 25,000 litre tank, you've got less than a month's supply if there's no rain. So we recommend that you have at least, I think, 43,000 litres if you're a family of four in an average size house to have as storage, and your sort of normal large size water tank is about 25,000 litres.
So we're talking
yeah.
2 tanks.
Yep, and when you get your tank topped up, typically it's with a 10,000 litre truckload. So, yes, there is a bit of a cost to install a tank, but every extra 10,000 litres you get, that's a few $100s you save yourself on a delivery every time you need a delivery.
It's the great toss-up, isn't it? The initial outlay. Do you know roughly? I know this isn't really your brief, but do you know roughly what the cost is for setting up a new tank?
So a lot of it depends on your site, but I would sort of budget around sort of $4,000 to $8,000, and that sort of range sort of varies about how easy your access is, how far you have to move, and the kind of site preparation you'd have to do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now, how often do you find a community who just don't think they're rural, and therefore that they run into trouble?
So the community of beachlands in particular, Omaha, Point Wells, and there's also areas that are in fact urban that have reticulated water supply, but many thousands of residents that still have rainwater tanks as their only water source. So in these areas where you've got essentially an urban style of development, they're much more constrained with the size of their lots, and those communities feel the pinch during those dry spells the most, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Jessica's just said hello. Hi, Jessica. I'm presuming that means you can hear us at the moment. Let's talk about the city now. Okay. For those of us who don't have our own water supply at all, apart from what comes out of the tap, goodness knows where that comes from. But seriously, what should we be thinking about? I mean, the conversation is increasingly around the water cooler, if they're not empty, is about us having our own more sustainable water supplies.
So a lot of it depends on the type of house you've got. So obviously, if you're in an apartment, your options about getting rainwater harvesting are very limited. But if you're in a fully detached suburban area with a bit of a garden, you can go from a rain butt, like you can see in the picture there, right up to something larger storage. The easiest thing to do is to focus on using rainwater for outdoor water use. And this is really just because if you want to plumb your rainwater tank into your house, you need to comply with building codes and building consents and so forth. But if you're just using that water for outdoor use and it's a relatively small tank, it's likely to be a permitted activity, and it's relatively low cost. So I'd think this summer, if you're a boat owner, having a rainwater tank is wonderful because you can now use that rainwater to clean and wash your boat and clean out the engines. If you're a gardener, that rainwater tank suddenly provides you with that irrigation water that you will not be able to use if there's water restrictions this summer. Likewise, if you want to clean your house or just have that bit of water volume there for security and peace of mind. So Wellington Council, for example, they subsidised 200-litre rain barrels after the Kaikoura earthquake, because they realised that if there's a natural disaster and there's a long-term mains failure, because it can take many weeks to fix a major infrastructure like deeply buried water mains, if many people have a volume of water, that can see them through a severe natural disaster as well. So we think that resilience benefit is a wonderful reason to have the water tank as well.
Wellington does seem to be bracing everyone for something coming. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Certainly not this year, anyway. So when you're talking about just, I mean, obviously, if you're plumbing it into your house to use for flushing or for consumption or for showers, sure, I can see that's a big deal. But about just putting your plastic tub in the garden and sort of hooking up a bit of hose from your guttering or whatever, do you need any sort of consents for that?
At the moment, once again, it depends. If your tank's less than a metre high, no, you can put it in as a permitted activity. Right now, the council is looking at changing the rules to make it a permitted activity in many more locations. So technically in Auckland, a rainwater tank over a metre high is classified as a building. So you hit the same kind of planning constraints as any building in your side yard or your rear yard. The reasons for those rules are just about amenity. They were put there because I guess people were concerned that a rainwater tank could be an eyesore for your neighbours, and they put some quite heavy controls across them. At the time when the unitary plan was first drafted, I don't think they had the same kind of rainwater tank products that you can see now. There's these slimline tanks that, whilst they're maybe 2.5 meters tall, they can have like weatherboard finishes. You wouldn't even notice them against the side of your house. And so that's part of the reason we're looking at changing the rules now. We know that there's options out there where a rainwater tank won't be an eyesore and it won't upset people's neighbours. And so we should make it a permitted activity in far more situations.
So it's interesting here because what you're talking a lot about is with permitted activities. This is about resource consent, is it not?
Correct. Yes.
Can you explain how that differs from building consent, particularly if people are going through this planning stage?
So a resource consent is about the rules in a council's district or regional plan. In Auckland, they're both the unitary plan. Building consents relate to standards and codes of practice under the Building Act, which is a piece of law, and the Building Code, which is managed by central government. So the types of issues when it comes to rainwater tanks that are Building Act issues will be structural stability. So if you want to put your tank up on a plinth or a stand, the higher it is, obviously, the more structurally dangerous that can be. So then the Building Act, just like that picture there, that's where the Building Act will come in place from a structural safety perspective. Likewise, the Building Act is concerned with the safety of your household plumbing and the potential for cross-contamination. So when you plumb your tank into the house's plumbing, the Building Act is there. With regards to the unitary plans, it's all about that bulk and location, the building envelope, the land use consent sides of things, and they're more concerned about the amenity, the look, the heritage character of your neighbourhood, and so forth.
Yeah. So again, you probably come up against a bit of a few difficulties if you were to put that last picture up in your backyard in Auckland as well. I imagine from a resource consent perspective as well. So you were just saying, this is interesting. So you're saying that the council is looking at, obviously, given the range of products aesthetically available now, they are looking at rewriting a few of those consent rules, are they? And this is directly in response to this water situation we're in at the moment, is it?
Absolutely. The drought has really brought these issues into focus. We actively want to encourage people to get more water storage, be more sustainable with their water use, and one thing we can do as a council is help remove those barriers and the cost impediments in there for people to do this. It was a relatively easy thing. Unfortunately, it just takes time for us to go through the formal processes to change those rules.
You work for council. I wonder how many times you said, unfortunately, it takes time. But what are your thoughts going into the near future? I know we're all watching. Anyone who lives in Auckland nowadays, it's a little bit like looking at, there are two graphs you look at every morning. One is the level of COVID in the world, and the other is the dam levels in Auckland. And I know we're about 25% behind where we need to be at the moment, but they're going in the right direction. What are your thoughts going to the near future, though, right now, for anyone who's in a water-restricted area?
Yeah, so look, we are, the long-range forecast is for a drier than normal spring and probably a drier than normal summer. So what we are planning for is that water restrictions at their current form will probably last all through summer. And we are really hoping that they don't need to get any worse. So I really do hope that we get the dam levels up there, but at the very least, this is a wake-up call for us to fix these rules that have been a barrier for people and make us think very seriously about our water security for the future.
Which comes down to what we're talking about, which is look after it for yourself. If you want to wash your car or wash your boat this summer, think about having your own supply. Andrew, really good of you to give us some time today. I appreciate that. Andrew Chin from Auckland Council there. Really interesting stuff. And by the way, that photo we put up at the beginning of the interview, that has won the Renovation and Outdoor Living Show photo of the year competition. Nobody is going to match that. So going out especially taken for it. No, that's very good. Awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
No worries. We'll hopefully have a chat to Andrew. Hopefully, when we're celebrating the reversal of this water situation. But it is interesting. One of the great things about if you're not in Auckland, you won't be aware of this. But so we've all been asked to conserve water wherever we can, and we are every week using less water than we've been asked to use, and that's the best thing about it. Everyone's taking a responsibility. So what is it that we can do when it comes to efficiency and it comes to saving water? Obviously, we've just talked about installing our own water supplies. What are the best products, though, for us to consider installing in order to save us, to make us use less water whilst not compromising our lifestyles too much? And this is where Matthew Jones comes in now. Matthew is the brand director of Methven. And you'll all know Methven, obviously, providers of taps and showers, etc., as plumbing stuff for the household. Matthew's responsible for global strategic marketing, covering brand, digital insight, and product streams. So, Matthew, this is really interesting. Have you guys found that people have been coming to see you more, saying we want efficiency because we're not allowed to use, or we don't want to use as much water as traditional?
Yeah, good afternoon, Rawdon. I think we are seeing more questions of that nature, and I think more generally, sustainability in that water space is becoming more of a hot topic as the years go by, and more of a focus for us. And so we are starting to drive that narrative stronger, particularly through our showering products.
Yeah, I was going to say. So when you're talking to your design teams, because Methven, you design the products as well, don't you?
Yeah, we design a lot of our products, not all of them, but we do design quite a lot, and we have an R&D and design team based here in Auckland, and so a shower like this we designed here in Auckland from the ground up, and we have a proud history of innovation, particularly in the showering space over the last sort of 20 odd years, where we've brought through a number of different spray profiles and experiences in the shower space that don't necessarily need to use a lot of water in order to deliver a good experience.
So that's really interesting, because I want to talk specifically about showers. We're told that is the biggest consumer of water, and certainly in Auckland, we've all been encouraged to 4-minute showers. We have timers. Well, the people in our house who use the showers more than that, they have timers. My wife sets a timer in the morning when she has a shower, or the afternoon. If it's hair washing day, that's irrelevant. But as far as monitoring the shower, how much of a difference does that make, do you reckon, to our daily consumption?
Oh, look, I think it can make a huge difference. I think the length of time spent in the shower is clearly an important factor. I mean, the showering space alone, there was a study done a few years back which showed that showering was the biggest contributor to water usage within the home. I think it was around about 27% of water consumption might have been around 2008 when that study was done. But I think not only in terms of the time, but also in terms of the flow rate that's pushed through your shower. So, you can have showers down as low as the one you saw on screen earlier, this one, which was at 5 litres a minute, right up to sort of 15 to 20 litres a minute. And the difference in that over the course of a year is huge, both in terms of the water use, but actually in terms of your energy use and cost as well, because the more water you're pushing through a shower, the more you're paying to heat that water, as well as paying for the water itself. And so, I think one of the things we always try to talk about is that, when it comes down to granular terms, there's a benefit in saving water, but there's actually a benefit to your pocket of using less water through your shower as well.
Certainly, for in our household budget, there's the energy consumption, which hurts. So that what you're showing us there, you said that's like 5 litres per minute, as opposed to some shower heads. So what's that one called? What's that particular product?
This one's called Kiri, so Methven Kiri, and it's a particular low flow variant. And what you can see, it actually has less nozzles than a typical shower head. And as a result of that, it's able to restrict the water along with the flow restrictor device that's in there to 5 litres a minute.
So how does that work as far as the experience goes? Because obviously there's no point spending all this time and energy on R&D to produce these brilliant products if it comes out as just a dribble?
Look, I think that's a really good point. You know, we always say there's no point delivering an ultra low flow shower if the experience is really poor, because people simply won't carry on with it. And there's been plenty of initiatives throughout the world where really low flow showers have been provided into homes for free to allow people to reduce their water consumption, but they quickly get swapped out if the experience is really bad. And you know, everybody prefers to have you know, decent water pressure and a decent experience in their shower. And so we would advocate for a balance there between restricting the flow to a level that still allows you to have a decent experience that you'll continue with. And I think one of the things we've tried to do as a Methven business through the technologies we've developed is to balance the water saving with the experience side and deliver a spray profile that still allows you to have an enjoyable experience at a restricted level. This label you see on screen is a WELS label, a water efficiency label, and you can find that on all shower and tapware products available on the market. It's a requirement, and this is very similar to perhaps the slightly more well-known energy label, but the star rating effectively indicates how water efficient it is, and the more stars, the more water efficient. In this case, the label goes up to 6 stars for tapware and up to 4 stars for showers. So 4 stars in that case of that label is the highest rating you can get.
So they brought that in a couple of years ago, I think, the water efficiency labeling system. It's a great idea. It's so easy for people to actually realize. The thing I want to ask you though about how much is does the pressure affect things? You know, obviously the difference between your low pressure, your mains pressure, that sort of thing. I mean, how hard is that to integrate with the various products? Which, you know, you might have the most efficient product, unless you have the right pressure system, it's not going to be great.
Yeah, I think pressure is something you need to understand before you make any purchase decision in this space. So in New Zealand, we have some quite unique conditions where we still have today a lot of low pressure hot water cylinders, and in some cases equal low pressure in a small number of homes. But that imbalance of pressure between cold and hot creates a unique dynamic for something like a shower that is not appropriate for all fixtures and fittings to operate within. So I think starting by knowing that and then navigating your product choice by whether something is suitable for all pressures versus being mains pressure only is a really good starting point. Otherwise, you're in that space of a compromised experience if a product has been designed for high hot water pressure and it's delivering a lower rate. The other thing to note in that area is that a lot of shower heads come with flow restrictors fitted in them. You can see one here in the end here of this product. And, you know, typically for a shower on mains pressure where the pressure is strong both from hot and cold and it's mixing well, you actually, we restrict those showers deliberately to actually optimize the spray profile and to stop the wastage of water. And one of the key things if you are on a mains pressure system is to check whether you have a restrictor in your shower, because you know you can be churning through a large volume of water if it's unrestricted in that space.
And this is what makes it worth actually excuse me, coming into one of the Methven stores and saying, hold on, you've got to match up the right product to the right pressure, to the right usability as well. Because I mean, I suppose it depends how many people are using the shower and how much water you're holding in your cylinder, etc. So it's a bit more than just coming in and saying, I want a shower head which has 3 different settings and is going to be relatively, and has a low star rating or a high star rating.
Yeah, indeed. I think there are a few things you can do to understand your pressure rating before you go into a store to choose a product. Typically, the easiest way is to simply check whether your flow rate is distinctly lower on hot versus cold, and often the best place to do that is in your bathtub, where typically the taps will give you the best read of that. If your flow rate on hot is a lot lower, typically you've got an unequal pressure situation where you've got mains cold water off the street and you've got a low pressure, typically a low pressure hot water cylinder feeding your hot. The other thing is, on the side of your hot water cylinder, there's often a label that will give you a view of the pressure reading as well. But increasingly we're seeing through new builds and renovations that more and more installations are mains pressure these days. So it tends to exist in houses that have older cylinders.
Do people still put baths in new builds, or are they becoming more and more?
Baths?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends. We're still seeing a lot of baths go out the door across our business. So I think there is still a demand for that in the family space, and then in the high end, in terms of luxury en suites, you're seeing a lot of freestanding bars and things go in as well. I think you'd have to say on average more people are showering these days than taking baths as their primary form of getting clean.
Matt, very quickly, that the Curie shower head you showed us, the 5.5 litre per minute. What would that cost you?
Oh, look, you're putting me on the spot. It'll be somewhere around the $100 to $120 mark for a shower head. And I think one of the things that's really interesting to note is you can change your own shower head really easily by unscrewing. If you have a hose, a rail shower with a hose attached to it, you can unscrew the shower head you've got, screw on a new shower head that's either designed for low flow or it has a flow restrictor in it. And that's a very simple and cost-effective way of actually reducing your water consumption through the shower.
That's awesome advice there. Thanks for that, Matt. Yeah, and it's not going to cost a lot to do it. If you can do it yourself, then the cost is negligible. Thank you so much for your help there, Matt. We'll speak to you again, because there are an awful lot of products you guys push out which would be interested to our supporters and viewers. That is Matthew Jones there from Methven. Thank you very much. Good to see you. And James said, nice to see you back. Rawdon, yes, sorry about the Wi-Fi issues from last week, Jane, but Ravina did a pretty sterling job of picking up the baton. Now, competition is still on. That's for the Nanoleaf canvas. You remember this amazing sort of art installation light color show thing. It's worth $360. If you want to win one, you can enter here on Facebook. Just tell us where you put your Nanoleaf and what features you most like about it. If you want to know what those features are, you can go and have a look at the Nanoleaf website. It's called the Nanoleaf Canvas for your information. So that brings us to, we're nearly out of time, to the top 10 for today. So on Friday we did DIY fails. We didn't get Wi-Fi fails, and today I found it's got nothing to do with DIY or renovations. It was just, sometimes I just roll my eyes at some people in society. These are the top 10 most ridiculous names you could give a child. Number 10. Well, actually, we got twins here at number 10. Preacher and Cyanide. Preacher and Cyanide. This is what a Welsh mum wanted to give her twins their names. Preacher was allowed, Cyanide was not. But the judge who looked at the name said, why did you choose Cyanide? And she said, well, because it's the poison that had been used to kill Hitler and Goebbels. So she had really good intentions, I guess. Anyway, number 9, Messiah. A judge said in this situation, you cannot label this child Messiah because it places an undue burden on him as a human being that he cannot fulfill. And the judge instructed them to rename him Martin, but they still call him Messiah, apparently. Number 8, this is in France. Well, of course you'd call your son Nutella if you were from France and you loved Nutella. Anyway, the judge intervened. The child is now known as Ella. At number 7, Strawberry. This is another French case. Well, it's actually not Strawberry because it's in France. The name was Fraise, which is, of course, French for strawberry. The judges, again, they intervened, and another renaming was issued by the judge, and that child is now known as Fraisine, which sort of is quite nice. Number 6, Prince William. This is a French again. A French couple's name for their pride and joy. The judge said, no, this will bring a life of mockery to the child. So they did agree to rename their child. The child's now called Mini Cooper. Number 5. Well, there was always going to be somebody who was going to call their child Adolf Hitler. This was in America. This child is one of 8, born, funnily enough, to a far-right fanatic couple. One of the sisters of Adolf Hitler was named by this mum and dad Jocelyn Aryan Nation. The kids, by the way, are now all in the care of social services. There's a relief. At number 4, For Real, as it's spelled on the screen. Now, this may not surprise you that this was a Kiwi company who called their couple, their young pride and joy For Real, and they were denied the name because it has a digit in it. Their second choice was Superman, and that stuck. So there's some poor child wandering around called Superman For Real. Number 3, as in that, at. This was in China, and they pronounce it at. The government said no, and the Chinese government says no. No is what's going to happen. And number 2, this is the name. I don't even know how to say it, but this is the name that that 2 Swedish parents wanted to give their son. You can see in brackets this is Albin, because that's actually that's how they said you could pronounce it. When the judge said, "Why you called your son whatever it is 11116," they said it's a pregnant expressionistic development that we see as an artistic creation. Good luck to that child. Oh, by the way, they were fined for not giving their child a suitable name before his 5th birthday. So they offered a compromise, and they decided to just call their son A. The fine was upheld. And number 1, the most ridiculous name that I could find to top our top 10 this week, it was a Kiwi creation, and they called their daughter Tallulah Does the Hula from Hawaii. That is what they called their daughter. Now, a decision by a judge noted, and I quote you, that the girl refused to reveal her name to friends, and they asked her to call her Kay, a letter which you may have noticed does not appear anywhere in the phrase Tallulah Does the Hula from Hawaii. The judge blasted the couple's decision and the decisions of all such parents who cripple their children with, quote, a social disability and handicap unnecessarily. And it didn't stop there. The judge removed that girl, removed Tallulah from, Tallulah Does the Hula from Hawaii. They removed her from the parents' custody altogether, placed her into court guardianship. Absolutely extraordinary. What a ridiculous name. And that's coming from Rawdon. I'll see you Friday. Bye-bye.